Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of M365 Voice. My name's Antonio Mayo.
I'm Sarah Halsey.
And I am Mike Marani.
And today we're going to talk to you a little bit about OneDrive. We're going to each talk a little bit about how do we use OneDrive. OneDrive is a pretty useful and amazing tool within Microsoft 365. And I think we're talking about it specifically around how do we use it for work.
Right.
So, Mike, how do you use OneDrive?
Well, I live in OneDrive, basically. I live in a OneDrive sync client. Everything is in my OneDrive, other than a few things in SharePoint. But I organize my workload and every file and every client and events and anything that I want to keep, whether it is videos, pictures, work-related, deliverables, everything goes into my OneDrive. So I organize them by folder, I organize them by different type of folders, some of them by year as well. And I use the sync client most of the time. So I live in my Windows Explorer for OneDrive, and I occasionally go into the web browser to do other things as well. But OneDrive is my go-to for everything I manage in my day-to-day activities.
Sarah, how do you use OneDrive?
I use OneDrive. It's my default file storage location for work files, unless I need to immediately share it with a team. It actually takes me more steps to think about creating a file and saving it in a team than it does to just go create the file and save it to my OneDrive. It feels like going and creating a file and saving it to my OneDrive is the fastest path to getting going on a file and then to sharing it. So I also use folders, but I find that over time, I've actually gotten less structured and organized with my folders. I do have folders, but then I kind of have high-level folders. I've stopped and abandoned using detailed subfolders. I do use the OneDrive sync client if I know exactly where a file is, but otherwise, I frankly also go a lot to the browser, OneDrive in the browser, and I use search to find my OneDrive files.
So when you say you use OneDrive like you go to OneDrive and you need to create a file and share it with somebody, are you going to it in the web browser and creating a file there?
No, usually if I create a file, the fastest way for me to create a file is to go to Word, Excel, or PowerPoint, create the file, and just save it directly there into my OneDrive.
So you save it directly into your OneDrive. You
Correct.
actually go to the site, like in one of the locations in the Save As page.
Well, I just go straight to my OneDrive usually to save it. And then if I need to share it to a SharePoint site or to Teams, most of the time I will just create it in my OneDrive first, and then I will share it from there or add it to a team. Although I'll be honest with you, the fastest path that I generally use is to create a file in my OneDrive, and then I am someone or a group of people in Teams and just attach it. That's usually the way that I go about it, because I find it's the path of fastest work.
So for me, I almost never go to the OneDrive. I never go to the OneDrive website. Like I almost never go to OneDrive in the web browser. We've got known folder move. Our company rolled out known folder move, and essentially my desktop is synced to OneDrive all the time. So I access files and I create files on my desktop, and they get automatically synced to OneDrive. So Mike, I don't know if that's what you were describing, but I literally have specific folders that I've organized on my desktop that I'm looking at, and those get automatically synced. So when I need to create a file, I literally right-click on the desktop, new document, or I copy another document, open it on the desktop, edit it, create it, and it's automatically synced to OneDrive.
Yeah, I do have the no folder move to the cloud enabled, which is great. If anyone doesn't have it synced, it's the best thing ever. Because if you are working, especially if you're working multiple desktops, like I do work with multiple desktops, and I do store files on the desktop, and I don't manage everything on the desktop, but I do store files there. So if you are jumping from one machine to another, it's amazing. So you just put it on the desktop, you go to another machine, and you see it there. But no, I don't store a lot on my desktop. So mostly are in a regular file structure in my OneDrive, and that's what I use the most. And when I share files, I tend, even with clients or internal, I don't share them. I don't attach files. I always share them with specific people, and I put an expiry date on it as well, because that is a way for me to know that I don't have to go clean up afterwards. Rather than attaching file. The only time I attach a file if I get a request back, can you attach the file instead of sharing a link? So that way is I know I don't need to make my inbox size really big. Not the number of items, the size
Who
of it.
cares about your inbox? I mean, like it can get as big as it wants, Mike.
Yeah, true. But it's a way for me to control who has access to my file.
So when I share files from OneDrive, I do it like Sarah was describing. So I am somebody on Teams, and I'll attach the file there, and they'll get a link to the file in OneDrive.
Right. The only time I go on the browser for a couple of reasons. One is if I am in a SharePoint document library and I want to add a shortcut to one of the folders into OneDrive, I want to see it. It's a quick way for me, rather than syncing a document or a folder or a document library into my desktop. I do add a shortcut, and then it appears in the browser. It appears also in your sync client. So that's a quick way for me to go and access those files. Or I've used it a couple of times where I want to request files. So you can go into a folder, and if you want some files or feedback from people, if you're working on specific documents and they want files from them, you just request files and they just drop files for you instead of emailing you with those files.
The only times I go to you just remind me of a situation. The only times I go to the OneDrive website is when I need to share files with people outside of our company. So that's where I'll go to OneDrive, the website, I'll find the file there, and then I will share it just through the regular sharing mechanism to share the file with somebody. That's the only circumstance I can think of where I go to the website now. It's rare that I go to the website. Just because it's so easy to work on the desktop or in Windows Explorer and then just have it automatically.
Any reason you don't do the sharing from your desktop? Because you have the same experience.
No, I don't do it from the desktop. I think that might just be habit.
Okay.
I'm just used to doing it from the website.
Yeah.
Do you guys ever clean up your OneDrive? Do you ever actually go and get rid of? Because I've amassed lots of files in there by sharing links on in chats, in one-to-one chats. So there's lots of files sitting up there that they just ended up there because I put it in a chat.
I do. I probably do it twice a year. I always go and clean up.
Do you clean up, Sarah?
I'm speechless. Mike, it's been a long time. Our audience is I don't understand you. You'll go clean up your OneDrive files, but your email, no.
So in my little brain, there's two different things there. Email, I think about it as a transitory document. It's not a record. I do have a retention on it. So after 7 years, it gets deleted. So I don't care about that. When in OneDrive, I do have some documents that I want to decide if I want to keep them longer than 7 years or not. So I want to have that decision, and I don't want to go through stage and multi. I don't think we can do some multi-stage disposition with OneDrive. So I just don't go. I just want to manage what I get.
You can ironic. If you have a retention label, but not with retention policies.
Right.
Sorry, Sarah, you were going to say.
It's a little bit ironic. So I think for people that listen to Mike, we generally agree, Mike, I think on 97% of topics, except management of email and OneDrive. I feel like it's the only things that we generally don't agree on, but I don't go out and clean up or manage my OneDrive files because I create so many documents. And I would say, what's the value of doing that when search works? So the very reasons why I don't clean up my OneDrive files are the reasons why you don't manage your inbox more closely. And we're exactly in the inverse. So I feel like we're living in a parallel version of reality. So
It's surprising that we use the same method to look for what items. So you use search in OneDrive and I use search in my mailbox.
Yeah.
I like that.
I'm with Sarah though. I never clean up OneDrive. I've amassed lots and lots of files there through sharing. I never go clean it. It's there. I don't have time. The files that are important to me are on my desktop. And now I know that they're synced to OneDrive, so I don't kind of worry about it because that's my backup. But I'm a little old school that way. I still work on my Windows desktop. My
you can't
files
say
are there
old school because Team Antonio and Team Sarah's alignment was looking great until you said old school. We were winning, Antonio.
Okay, not old school. Aligned with Team Sarah, apparently. Yes.
What else? I use the app, the mobile app. Sorry.
Oh, do you?
Quite a bit, yeah. And it is my go-to app for travel expenses. So every time I have a paper receipt and I scan it with OneDrive, it goes into, or I save it in a specific folder, and that's where I manage all my expenses. So I love it.
I've actually watched you do that at a conference.
Yeah.
I think I've seen you buy something and you like scan the receipt right away.
Yeah, it's a way for me not to lose receipts and get my better half not screaming at me what are the expenses.
And do you use the OneDrive app, sir?
I do. I use it actually quite a bit when I am driving the kids somewhere, sitting and waiting. I can work on a document on the go. I can be able to be productive wherever I am. The one interesting thing that I was going to say is that I use the OneDrive Sync client a lot. I use Windows Explorer a lot, but if there's one thing that I see from other people who are working, it's that if their OneDrive Sync client, for whatever reason, doesn't do the silent sign-on, they aren't signed into their local OneDrive Sync client, or there's an issue with their connectivity and the files are not syncing to the cloud, they think the files are not in OneDrive if they're not in the sync client, as opposed to, I always say, I assume that there's a PC level issue with the sync client syncing, and that you should then go check in the browser because your files are probably in OneDrive and you can access it there. I don't have a problem keeping my sync client refreshed, but I find that I'm always looking at my system tray at the OneDrive icon to make sure it's lit up and going. That's just one of those things that I check as a part of my general status throughout the day.
That's a great point. I didn't used to do that, but I started doing that sometime mid last year because I started noticing that I wasn't always signed into OneDrive. And I think it's partly because our systems here at work are connected to our Office 365 account, right? So when I sign into my desktop, I sign into that. And as a consultant, I'm logging into new tenants and new systems all the time from my work machine. And I think my identity tends to get a little messed up when I do that, when I'm switching between tenants, when I'm switching between environments. So sometimes it's not logging in. And then I start to see, oh, the autosave's not working.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
I see people getting stuck there too, because sometimes if they have to sign into their PC and then they have to log into VPN, and if the VPN login does not happen quicker than the OneDrive sign in, then OneDrive, the sync client, can actually not launch appropriately, in which case you have to go kind of give it a nudge after you're logged into VPN if it takes you a little while to get connected to VPN. And I find that often is the key point where people can get stuck.
Yeah. And I think the way you said it is exactly the way you deal with it. You look at the system tray and look at the icon. If the icon has an X on it, then you've got to click on it and you've got to kind of refresh or sign in again. And that seems to kickstart it and get it going, like you said.
Yeah, same thing with me as well. I noticed I've watched it lately, and I make sure that I'm signed in just in case I've logged into a different tenant, or the refresh. Sometimes it gets stuck. The refresh is still there, and I'm gonna have to make sure it's synced properly, especially for files that I need to access them if I am offline, because I don't keep all the files locally. I would say 90% of the files I have are cloud only. So
I was going to ask that as the next question. Do you guys use the always keep on this device flag to keep files or folders on the device?
Not often.
Barely.
And in fact, the only time that I do it is, frankly, conference presentations. I will generally do it because sometimes the connectivity can be difficult, but that's really the only time I do it for work. I don't think I have ever used the always keep on this device setting for work ever.
And we were so well aligned until now. I use the always keep on this device all the time because I am often offline. If I'm on a flight or if I'm in an airport, if I'm in transit somewhere, and I like to have the files locally. If I'm working, I just can't get an internet connection, which does tend to happen when I was traveling, and now that I've kind of resumed traveling again a little bit, I find I don't have a great internet connection on a semi-regular basis.
So what I do if I know I'm going to be working on some files offline, I don't select the option always keep them locally. I just double click on the file, make sure it's downloaded, because there's a different behavior for that. Because when you select always keep them offline, they will never hydrate. They will never go on cloud only. So when you run out of disk space, they will always stay on your device up until you go and make them cloud only. Versus if you double click on it and it gives you the lighter green check mark, if you're running on low on disk space and you haven't actually worked on that file for 30 days, then basically it will automatically make it cloud only.
Agreed. I just haven't run out of disk space yet, ever. So
the other reason why I think I don't tend to do that is from a work perspective, I might be working from multiple PCs, devices, or even virtual desktops, in which case always keep on this device. If my device is changing, that won't necessarily help me work. Versus when I do it for like a conference travel and I'm working off my personal device, my Surface laptop, then I know that I will be on that device. Well, actually, that's not true because I have a Surface Go as well. Yeah, I do that pretty selectively based on a trip.
I usually can't tell in advance which files I'm going to need, so most of my folders are always keep on this device, just in case.
Yeah, because I've ran into a situation like a double click on it. I am in an airplane. I'm like, oh, it is cloud only.
Yeah.
That's going to cost me $10 because I have to get on a Wi-Fi and download it.
Yeah.
This was a really good conversation. I like it. And once again, Mike, it's interesting. I
surprise you all the time.
Well, I think it's interesting for us to talk about how we use these tools differently, right? There's different ways to do the same thing, and it kind of surfaces the value of the tools in different ways that maybe people don't realize.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been a great topic. So thanks everyone for joining us. I hope this is helpful, and hope you're using OneDrive. Thanks.
Thank you. Bye.